Welcome to the SWAYAM MOOC course, NGOs and Sustainable Development, Unit 3, Module 19, Protecting Ecosystem Services for Sustainable Development. Learning Objectives. By the end of this module, you will be able to learn the importance of protecting the ecosystem, understand the role of provisioning services, regulatory services, supporting services, and cultural services in protecting the ecosystem for sustainable development. Now, let us see what is the ecosystem. An eco refers to a natural habitat. An ecosystem is a region where a bubble of life is created by plants, animals, and other organisms interacting with the weather, environment, and other factors. The mechanism that enables biological groups or species to coexist organically and engage with their physical surroundings is, in other words, an ecosystem. Ecosystem supports the biosphere and keeps the planet's natural balance. Now let us see the components or the structure of an ecosystem. Ecosystem contains biotic or living parts as well as abiotic or non-living parts. Now if we take biotic, then the biotic or living things includes plant, animals and organisms. Abiotic or non-living things includes weather, earth, sun, soil, climate, atmosphere, land, rocks, temperature as well as humidity. Linking biotic and abiotic constitutes what we call the ecosystem, and it has two major forces: the flow of energy through the ecosystem and the cycling of nutrients within the ecosystem are the two major factors. Ecosystems vary in size. Some are small enough to be contained within a single water droplet, while others are large enough to encompass the entire landscape and region, which we call as biome. Now let us see how energy flows. Radiant energy from the sun is the primary source of energy for practically all the ecosystem. The figure indicates how sunlight helps photosynthesis of the plants, and then it gets into the land by the decay of organisms. The dead organisms and the waste products that are submerged in the land helps in the formation of fossil fuels. The organic carbon gets submerged in the land or gets gathered in the land, and then there is respiration of the plants. By the respiration of the plants, carbon dioxide is taken in and oxygen is released out. So there is auto and factory emissions as well, which also emits carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So this carbon dioxide again gets into the plants as the form of photosynthesis, and oxygen is released from the plants. So this cycle continues, and for all this, sun is the important energy source. The ecosystem's autotrophic or self-sustaining creatures utilize the energy of sunshine, that is, those that make their own food. The autotrophs, self-sustaining organisms, take up this energy and employ photosynthesis to create carbohydrates by converting carbon dioxide and water, H2O. These carbohydrates serve as energy stores for the autotrophs, who use that energy to create more sophisticated organic products like lipids, proteins, starches that are necessary for the organisms in the planet to survive. The ecosystem's producers are these autotrophs. The nutrient cycling. Nutrients are chemical elements and compounds that organisms need for growth and for maintenance of life. Although autotrophs obtain nutrients primarily from the soil, while heterotrophs obtain nutrients primarily from other organisms, the cells of each are made up primarily of 6 major elements. These elements are nothing but hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus and sulfur. These make up the majority of organisms' protoplasm. Heterotrophs, on the other hand, are mammals and fungi, as well as majority of the bacteria and other microbes which are present, and they are called as heterotrophs. Now let us see the energy pyramid. Together, the autotrophs and the heterotrophs make up the different trophic levels in an ecosystem, including the producer level, which is made up of autotrophs. The primary consumer level, which is composed of these organisms, feed on producers. The secondary consumer level, which is composed of those organisms that feed primarily on the primary consumers, and then it continues. For example, the producer of oxygen is the trees as shown in the animation, and the oxygen is taken up by small microbes and they become the primary source consumers. The eater of this, maybe the foxes, become the secondary consumers and they take in this oxygen. So the cycle continues. A food chain is made up of a flow of organic matter and energy from the producers through various consumer levels. For example, a typical food chain in a grassland may be grass, which is the producer of oxygen, which is eaten by the mouse, which is the primary consumer. The mouse is eaten by a snake. Now the snake becomes the secondary consumer. The snake is eaten by a hawk and the hawk becomes the tertiary consumer. So the food chain continues. Earth's surface is made up of a network of interconnected ecosystems in a bigger biome. Ecosystems are frequently interconnected. Large areas of land, water or atmosphere are known as biomes. Examples of biomes include forests, ponds, reefs and the tundra. We may find a variety of habitats within each forest or pond, reef or area of the tundra. For instance, let us take the Sahara Desert biome, which has a diverse range of ecosystems. The biome is characterized by its hot and dry weather, oasis habitats with date palm trees, fresh water, and creatures like crocodiles can be found within the Sahara. Additionally, the Sahara features dune ecosystems with the wind controlling the shifting topography, which we see as the sand dunes. These ecosystems have inhabitants such as snakes and scorpions must be able to endure the long periods of time in the sand dunes. Even the ocean is part of the Sahara, as the Atlantic Ocean produces cold fogs on the coast of northwest Africa. This Saharan habitat is home to shrubs and creatures like goats that eat the tiny trees. China's and Mongolia's Gobi Desert is another example. A chilly desert with frequent precipitation and sub-freezing temperature is the Gobi Desert. In contrast to the Sahara, the Gobi features ecosystems built on miles of bare rock, not sand. Some grasses can thrive in this harsh, dry weather. As a result, grazing animals like the gazelle and even the endangered wild horse species Taki can be found in these Gobi Desert environment. Now let us see the types of ecosystems. An ecosystem consists of three types of ecosystems named as biomes. The three major types are aquatic biomes, terrestrial biomes and lentic biomes. Aquatic biomes of freshwater ecosystem includes the oceans, rivers, seas, lakes, springs and other bodies of water. All of them contain aquatic biomes. These biomes are further divided into smaller ecosystems such as pond, rivers, shallow water, deep water, warm water, cold water. Pond ecosystems are often quite modest and comprise a wide variety of invertebrates and amphibians. Fish are occasionally seen here as well, but they are not as mobile as the amphibians. River ecosystem. Fish is a very important component of this ecosystem, which also includes plants and amphibians as well as insects. Additionally, there are birds that hunt for food near and in the water. They take the small fishes present in the river ecosystem. The shallow water ecosystem is one where we find very tiny fishes since the water is very shallow, and corals that live in shallow waters are also found when they are close to the land. Deep water ecosystems are home to enormous marine life that dwells in ocean's deepest depths. Creatures which the average human eye may not be able to see. Warm water ecosystem. The Pacific Ocean and other warmer oceans are home to some of the most remarkable and complex ecosystems on Earth. The cold water ecosystem. Cold water with less diversity still sustain very complex ecosystem. The food chain often starts with the plankton and then moves on to small fish, which are then eaten by larger fish or by other animals like the seals and the penguins, and all of these form the cold water ecosystem. Next, coming to terrestrial biomes. The terrestrial biomes are those such as forests, deserts, grasslands, tundras and coastal regions are all examples of the terrestrial ecosystem, and these are ecosystems which are found on the land. Depending on the climate, there may be more than one terrestrial biome. This ecosystem can be classified as rainforest ecosystem, tundra ecosystem, deserts, forests, savannas, grasslands, etc. Rainforests are particularly dense type of the environment, so many different types of organisms live in such a small space. Tundra, only a small number of life forms can live in a tundra ecosystem, which are generally simple ecosystem due to their extreme environmental conditions. Deserts, they are the polar opposite of the tundras, but nevertheless they feature harsh weather. Intense heat is preferable than extreme cold for many of the animals. Forests, one can find more forests than any other ecosystem in the world, such as deciduous and coniferous forests. Forests can support many life forms and they are a complex ecosystem. Savannas, they are different from deserts in that they receive more annual rainfall. Deserts, however, only receive a relatively small amount of precipitation every year. Savannas typically have greater rainfall, which is beneficial for sustaining more life species. Grasslands can have incredibly intricate and diverse ecosystem that support a wide range of life. Next, coming to the third type, lentic biomes. These kind of ecosystem that support both aquatic and terrestrial life, both on land and as well as under the water. Examples are swamps. Since the ecosystem inhabitants depend on the carbohydrates produced by photosynthesis, the only prerequisite for photosynthesis to occur in this type of environment is exposure to sun. The food chain. Trophic levels are the nutrient level in the food chain. Based on their eating habits, the organisms in the trophic levels of the food chain are divided into several groups. As shown in the animation, we have grass growing because of sunlight and water. This grass is eaten by the primary consumer, the grasshopper, which is eaten by the secondary consumer, frog, and the frog is eaten by the snake, which becomes the tertiary consumer, and the snakes are eaten by hawks, which becomes the final consumer, and when they decompose, then they form fungi. So this food chain continues, and sometimes it goes up to man. Green plants or producers make up the lowest level of the food chain. The second level is created when herbivores or other primary consumers ingest these producers' byproducts. The third stage is then created by carnivores or tertiary consumers eating these herbivores. The third level also includes omnivores or species that eat both plants and animals. Organisms that consume these carnivores are considered quaternary consumers. In addition to the levels just mentioned, decomposed represent an entirely separate level of the food chain. These decomposers aid in the breakdown of waste products and turn them into nutrients that benefit the producers. Lastly, decomposers make up for a completely different level in the food chain alongside the given levels. These decomposers help in breaking waste material and convert them into nutrients which are very useful for the producers. Namely, we use these nutrients at the field for farming, for growing agricultural products. Now let us see the importance of the ecosystem. Wild flora and animals can live there and find an habitat. The ecosystem encourages different food webs and food chains. It supports life and regulates crucial ecological processes. It plays a part in the transfer of nutrients between biotic and abiotic elements. It aids in preserving an ecosystem's regular energy flow, which includes carbon, energy, nitrogen, oxygen, and the water cycle. But however, we have threats to the ecosystem. As human population has increased, many ecosystems have been replaced by humans. For instance, the Great Plains tall grass prairie was converted to agricultural land. Fewer bison could live as the habitat dwindled. All of these Amazon forest, rainforest ecosystem are again a threat because of human activity. For agriculture, habitation and industry, tens of thousands of acres of land has been removed. Brazil, Venezuela, Ecuador are examples of Amazon rainforest nations that are underdeveloped. Many impoverished farmers gain from clearing land for crops like soya, corn, etc. They have a consistent source of income and food thanks to these resources. Families are able to afford better health care and kids are able to go to school. However, destroying rainforest ecosystem comes with a price. Plants found in rainforests have been used to create several contemporary medications. These medications include quinine, which is used to treat malaria, and curare, a muscle relaxant. Many experts are concerned that damaging the environment of the rainforest could stop the development of new medicines. The ecosystem of rainforests are not very good for farming. The soil in the Amazon rainforest is thin and is nutrient poor, in contrast to the rich soils of the Great Plains, where humans devastated the ecosystem of the tall grass prairie. Crops may only be able to grow for a few seasons before all the nutrients are utilized. The farmer or the agribusiness must leave the empty ecosystem behind, go on to the next plot and again do agriculture, which is not a very healthy practice. Now let us see the 4 types of ecosystem services. The categories of ecosystem services includes provisioning, regulating, supporting and cultural. So they are termed as provisioning services, regulatory services, supporting services and cultural services. Now when we look at these services, we find that the tangible resources or benefits that individuals acquire from the ecosystem are known as provisioning services, or the ecosystem provides for these things. Ecosystems provide people with a variety of material benefits such as water, food, wood and other products. Next, coming to the regulatory services, some of the regulating services given by the ecosystem include crop pollination, maintaining the quality of air and soil, preventing floods and diseases, providing flood control. Next, coming to the supporting services include giving plants and animals a place to live and preserving a variety of both. Cultural services refer to the non-material benefits people receive from the ecosystem. This consists of spiritual connections to the natural world, cultural identity, aesthetic inspiration, and having a sense of belonging. Now let us see each of this and their contributions from the ecosystem to mankind. Now taking food, agriculture. Currently the world produces enough food to feed 7 billion people who live there. With the rate of production increasing more quickly than the population over the last 20 years, there is 17% more food produced globally than it was 30 years ago. So this providing of food to mankind comes under the provisioning services. Food production is one of the ecosystem services that has steadily increased over time. It is now understood, however, that the increase in agricultural productivity and production were frequently accompanied by detrimental consequences on the agriculture's natural resource base, compromising on the future productivity potential. Over the past 2 decades, ecosystem approaches to agriculture intensification have arisen as farmers have adopted sustainable practices which are essential to achieving the advantages of ecosystem services while minimizing the adverse effects from agricultural activities. The second provisioning services is cattle. Nearly 1/3 of the protein consumed by human comes from livestock. When it comes to micronutrients, animal products are crucial for human nutrition. The only way to create food on large tracts of range land that are not ideal for growing crops is through ruminant animals which can digest the cellulose in grass and convert it to human edible proteins. However, alternate animal production methods rely on grains which may cause a conflict between human food and cattle feed. Next, coming to fish. People all across the world get a considerable quantity of animal protein from the capture and culture of marine and freshwater fish. Between 50 and 20% of all animal proteins are thought to derive from the aquatic creatures. Fish is particularly a good source of long-chain omega-3 fats, making it a helpful supplement for diets that are deficient in certain vitamins and minerals. The sector also depends on food services for significant financial income and jobs. Half of the fish consumed by humans is produced through aquaculture, one of the fastest growing food producing industry. Next, coming to the forest. What does forest provide as a provisioning service to mankind? The non-timber forest products also contribute to a large part of the nutrition in developing countries. Wood. The ecosystem provides a great diversity of materials including wood, biofuels and fibers from wild or cultivated plant and animal species. Examples of raw material include the biofuel and fibers. So after food, wood is the second providing services from the ecosystem that is used by man. Cattle. Different types of raw materials are provided by livestock including fiber, wool, mohair, skin and other products which is utilized in the feed and food industries, for example bones and blood. The third is the development of microalgae and fish waste for biofuels, the use of mangroves as building materials and for smoking fish, and the use of shells for jewelry and other cultural artifacts are few examples of raw materials related to capture fisheries and aquaculture. Forest examples are the wood and fibers provided by the forests. The third after food is water. After food, wood is water. Water is the third provisioning services given by the ecosystem to mankind. No water means no life. Freshwater movement and storage are essential functions of the ecosystem. Since irrigation uses account of about 60% of all the freshwater withdrawals worldwide, crops are strongly reliant on water. Cropping technologies that are improved can also help the soil retain more water and provide more water. A significant user of freshwater resources is the livestock. The majority of this water footprint is caused by the feed they eat. An estimated 15% of the water used in agriculture worldwide is used by livestock. However, in many of the major watersheds around the world, grasslands are an important habitat. When compared to exposed soil, grasslands can hold 50 to 80% more water, lowering the livelihood of drought and flooding. Some of the land uses that produce the most water are traditional grazing pastures. Next, coming to fish. The provision of fresh water by aquatic ecosystem can be supported through sustainable fisheries management and aquaculture development. When conserving existing ponds, for instance, aquaculture might act as a steward for freshwater resources. Freshwater management must be done sustainably, and frameworks for water management must incorporate fisheries and fish management. Next, coming to forests. Forests are a stable source of pure water and aids in maintaining a healthy aquatic habitat. In addition to filtering and purifying the water, forests also assist to prevent soil erosion and lessen the reservoir sedimentation. It also lessens the likelihood of mudslides, flood, and other issues that could endanger the downstream water supplies. Furthermore, while trees themselves use water, they also increase the infiltration rates, recharging the subsurface aquifers in the process. Freshwater supply may be negatively impacted by forest cover loss. Next, coming to the fourth provisioning services given by the ecosystem is the medicinal resources. Natural habitats offer a variety of plants and mushrooms that work well as treatments for a wide range of health issues. They are employed in the creation of medicines as well as conventional and alternative medicine. There is a growing interest in the use, development, cultivation, conservation, and sustainable use of medicinal and aromatic plants all over the world in both developed and developing nations. In many nations today, medicines made from the plants serve as the foundation for health care. These procedures are conventional and are sometimes used as contemporary also. A large diversity of therapeutic plants can be found in grasslands. In one study conducted in the Philippines, 58 species were discovered. These herbal remedies will disappear as grasslands degrade. Traditional medicine makes use of a number of aquatic plants and creatures, including seahorses, starfish, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers. Algae can be gathered in the wild or from aquaculture ponds and are a significant source of beta carotene and other carotenoids, which are commonly used in pharmaceuticals. These plants and animals are in danger due to overfishing, habitat destruction, and pollution. To maintain the health of this medication reservoir, sustainable management is very much needed. Quinine, a key medication that necessarily combats malaria, comes from trees. As long as the delicate balance of the forest ecosystem is preserved, maintained, this traditional knowledge can tell us a lot about other potential natural remedies also. Now we have finished provisioning services. Now coming to the regulating services. Similar to what we have seen in provisioning services, we have lots of regulating services that come from agriculture, cattle, fish and forests. I am not going into the details of each. However, the notes which is going to be presented will have the detailed content on each of the regulatory services, supporting services and cultural services. However, I'll give you a brief overview on all the regulatory services. The first one is local climate air quality. The second is carbon sequestration and storage. The third is moderation of extreme events, wastewater treatment, erosion prevention and maintenance of soil fertility, which is again a regulating services which is provided by the ecosystem to aid mankind. And pollination. Pollination is again a regulatory services which is provided by the ecosystem. 6. Biological control. 7. Regulation of water flow. Next, coming to the supporting services. Supporting services are those services which helps the habitat, which supports the habitat, the species, both live species, the biotic and the abiotic. So, habitat for species is a supporting services. Maintenance of the genetic diversity is a supporting services. Next, coming to the cultural services. Under cultural services, that which the ecosystem provides to the mankind for healthy living is recreation and mental and physical health. The second cultural services provided is tourism. The third is aesthetic appreciation and inspiration of the culture, art and design. All this is required for healthy living for the mankind. So, cultural services is an extended services required by mankind for healthy living in the ecosystem by taking care of the ecosystem without damaging the habitats. The fourth is the spiritual experience and a sense of place. The nature of our ecosystem is, all of us are aware, rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruits. Sun does not shine on itself. Flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. That is the nature, that is our ecosystem. Living for others is the rule for nature. How are we treating our nature? How are we going to protect our ecosystem? We human beings have a very important role in maintaining, in preserving our ecosystem for sustainable development. Now let us see a few questions and answers. Question 1. What is the role of ecosystem in the environment? Ecosystems have a very critical role in regulating the climate and soil, water and air quality. But management to change an ecosystem process in support of one regulating ecosystem service can either provide co-benefits to other services or can result in trade-offs. Question 2. What is the sustainable use of an ecosystem? To use biodiversity in a sustainable manner means to use natural resources at a rate that the earth can renew them. It's a way to ensure that we meet the needs of both the present and the future generations. As the human population increases, so does the pressure on the ecosystem, since we are drawing our resources from the ecosystem. Question 3. What are the 5 functions of an ecosystem? The key functional aspects of an ecosystem are energy flow, food chain and food web, biogeochemical cycling, ecosystem development and ecosystem regulation with stability. To summarize, in this module, we have learned the importance of protecting the ecosystem, understood the role of provisioning services, regulating services, supporting services and the need for also cultural services for protecting the ecosystem towards sustainable development. Thank you.